The Los Angeles Superior Court building gleamed under a harsh, indifferent sun. Its polished granite facade reflected a city that moved on, relentlessly, regardless of the personal earthquakes rumbling within its walls. Inside, in a sterile, wood-paneled room that smelled of lemon polish and quiet despair, the final act of a 10-year marriage was concluded with the anticlimactic scratch of a pen. And that, Ms. Thorne, Mr. Evans, constitutes the final judgment of dissolution. The orders are effective immediately. Judge Wilton's voice was a dry, bureaucratic monotone. He didn't look up from his papers. To him, we were just another case number. Another set of assets to be divided. Another failed union to be notarized and filed away. Case #BC 658291. Thorne v. Evans. 10 years, 2 months, and 17 days. Reduced to a docket entry. I, Clara Thorne, soon to be just Clara Thorne again, signed the last page with a signature that was all sharp angles and finality. Clara Thorne. Not Clara Evans. Not anymore. The pen felt heavy, ceremonial, and absurdly light all at once. Next to me, Evan scrawled his name with a flourish that was all performative confidence. Evan P. Evans. The P stood for Prescott, his mother's maiden name. A nod to the bloodline that mattered more to him than ours ever had. He was already leaning back in his chair, adjusting the cuff of his chiton suit. A man unshackled. Our lawyers, Meredith on my side, a shark in a Chanel skirt suit, and Bradley on his, a tired-looking man with a perpetually damp forehead, exchanged a stack of documents. The air was thick with the silence of a transaction completed. There was no anger left. The fury had burned out months ago, leaving behind a cool, sterile ash. The grief had been mourned in private, a quiet death in the guest bedroom while he worked late. What remained was a crystalline clarity, hard and brilliant as a diamond. I trust the division of the personal effects listed in Schedule C is amenable, Meredith asked, her voice cutting the quiet. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. We'd fought over the Picasso sketch, the vintage Jaguar, the wine collection. In the end, I'd taken the art and the wine. He'd kept the car. A fitting metaphor. I'd thought at the time. He always was faster to run. Perfectly, Evan said, offering me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was the same smile he used at charity galas. All teeth and empty charm. Clara was always thorough. I met his gaze, saying nothing. My silence had become my greatest weapon over these last few months. It unnerved him. He was a man who needed an audience, a reaction, a soundtrack to his own life. My quiet observation was a void his ego couldn't fill. The 60-day period for the quitclaim deeds on the Beverly Hills and Malibu properties has been waived by mutual consent, Bradley droned on, mopping his brow. Title transfers will be recorded by end of business today. Mrs. Evans will retain sole ownership of the Beverly Hills residence. Mr. Evans will retain the Malibu property. Another fiction. Retain. As if they weren't both bought with my inheritance. My savvy. My work. The prenup. Ironclad and of my father's insistence. Had protected my initial capital. But the growth. The millions in equity. The art that appreciated. That was community property. The division had been brutal, surgical, and in my favor. Thanks to Meredith and the ledger of infidelities that began long before Sophie. The Malibu house was his consolation prize. A beachfront bone thrown to a dog. He just didn't know I'd hollowed it out first. Very well, Judge Wilton said, finally looking up. His eyes, magnified by thick glasses, passed over us with the mild interest one might give to a piece of moderately interesting furniture. The court wishes you both the best in your future endeavors. This matter is concluded. Concluded. Such a final, judicial word. It hung in the air as we stood. Meredith gave my arm a brief, firm squeeze. Bradley began shoving papers into his briefcase. Evan straightened his tie. The movement practiced and easy. Clara, he said. That false warmth back in his voice. He extended a hand. A peace offering. A performance for the lawyers. For the unseen cameras in his head. No hard feelings. I hope. We had some good years. I looked at his hand. The familiar signet ring. The Cartier love bracelet I'd bought him for our 5th anniversary. Still snug on his wrist. A symbol of a love that was now legally null and void. I didn't take it. The years were adequate. Evan, I said. My voice calm. Flat. The ending, however, is subpar. His smile faltered for a microsecond, then reset. Tighter. He withdrew his hand, always with the last word. No, I said, picking up my Bottega Veneta tote. You'll have the last word. I'm sure. You always do. It just rarely means anything. I turned and walked out of the courtroom, Meredith falling into step beside me. The heels of my Louboutins clicked a staccato beat on the marble floor. A sound of pure, unadulterated exit. I didn't look back. There was nothing in that room I wanted. The lobby of the courthouse was a study in controlled chaos. Lawyers huddled with anxious clients. Process servers scanned the crowd. And the air buzzed with low, urgent conversations. We moved through it like a ship cutting through a choppy sea. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, catching the dust motes in the air. It felt surreal. This mundane sunshine on the day your life formally split in two. You okay? Meredith asked as we pushed through the heavy brass doors. The heat of a Los Angeles afternoon hit us like a wall. I'm divorced, I said. It was a statement of fact, not a feeling. You're free, she corrected. A fierce grin on her face. And significantly wealthier than he is. Which is the best kind of free. Outside, the scene was different. The usual scatter of people waiting for Ubers, smoking cigarettes, staring at phones. But there was a cluster near the bottom of the wide steps. A familiar flash of honey blonde hair. A tall, willowy figure in a distractingly short white dress. Sophie. My step didn't hitch. I had expected something. A text. Perhaps. A florist's delivery of "Congratulations on your divorce, lilies." Drenched in irony. Not this. Not a personal appearance on the courthouse steps. It was gauche. It was supremely Evan. He emerged from the courthouse doors behind us. His stride suddenly more buoyant. He saw Sophie and his face transformed. The practiced charm melted into what he probably thought was genuine, boyish joy. It was the look of a man who'd just traded in a reliable sedan for a flashy, unreliable sports car. Darling, he called out, his voice carrying. Sophie turned, her face a perfect mask of staged surprise and delight. She was 25, an aspiring gallery assistant with the soul of an ATM and the art history knowledge of a potato. She fluttered a hand. Evan. Over here, I continued down the steps. My destination a sleek, black Mercedes S-Class idling at the curb. My driver, Leo, standing patiently by the open rear door. Meredith shot a venomous look over her shoulder but kept pace with me. You have got to be kidding me, she muttered. The audacity. Do you want me to have her removed for loitering? No, I said. My voice still calm. Let him have his moment. It's the last expensive one he's going to get for a while. I was halfway to the car when I heard the gasp from the small crowd. A unified, theatrical intake of breath. I didn't need to turn around to know what was happening. I could feel it. The shift in the air. The sudden, prurient focus. I paused, one hand on the cool roof of the Mercedes, and finally looked back. Evan was on one knee on the dirty courthouse step. The sun glinted off his perfect hair, off the stupid love bracelet. In his hand, held aloft like a holy relic, was a ring box. And in that box, catching the California sun and fracturing it into 1,000 blinding sparks, was a diamond. Not a modest diamond. A stone of grotesque, shouty proportion. A 3-carat, brilliant cut monstrosity, set in a halo of smaller stones. On a band that looked suspiciously like the one I'd casually admired in a Harry Winston catalogue he'd left open months ago. Sophie Carmichael, Evan announced. His voice pitched to carry to the tourists. The board reporters waiting for a sentencing hearing. To God and everyone. This is the first day of my new life. And I can't imagine starting it without you. Will you do me the incredible honor of becoming my wife? The world seemed to slow. The sound muffled. I saw the grime on the step staining his $2,000 trousers. I saw the frantic, gleeful phone cameras raised in the periphery. I saw Sophie's hand fly to her mouth, her eyes wide with a performance of shock that would get her fired from a community theatre production. I saw the diamond, winking with obscene cheer. I saw it all with a detachment that was almost anthropological. Here was the mating ritual of the Los Angeles nouveau riche male, public, garish, and timed for maximum humiliation of the previous model. Sophie squealed, a high-pitched, grating sound that cut through the hum of traffic. Yes! Oh my God! Yes! Evan, she launched herself at him, almost toppling them both. He stood, sweeping her into a spin, the diamond flashing like a distress beacon. The small crowd, now growing as people spilled from the courthouse, erupted in a smattering of applause and whoops. A reporter I recognized from a local gossip site was suddenly there, phone held out, recording avidly. Their lips met in a kiss that was all teeth and tongue and showmanship. It was a press conference for their genitals. Meredith was rigid beside me, her face a mask of professional fury. Clara, get in the car. Right now. But I didn't move. I watched. My face a calm, impassive mask. Let them have their spectacle. Let the cameras roll. Let the world see Evan Evans, reborn and redeemed. A phoenix rising from the ashes of our marriage on the wings of a 3-carat diamond. He finally pulled away from Sophie, his arms slung possessively around her shoulders. His eyes scanned the crowd, the cameras, and finally, inevitably, landed on me. He was flushed with triumph, with victory. He'd won. He'd moved on. Publicly, gloriously. In under 20 minutes, he'd rewritten the narrative. The sad divorce was now the romantic hero, and I was the footnote, the scowling ex-wife watching from the sidelines. He gave me a look that said, see what you lost. See who wants me. I held his gaze. And then, very slowly, I let a small, cold smile touch my lips. It wasn't a smile of sadness, or rage, or even bitterness. It was the smile of a chess player who has just seen her opponents doomed. Flashy move, and knows the game is already over. His triumphant expression flickered, just for a second, confused by my lack of devastation. I turned away, the smile gone as if it had never been. I slid into the cool, leather-scented darkness of the Mercedes. Leo closed the door with a soft, definitive thud, shutting out the sound of the crowd, the giddy squeals, the pathetic theater of it all. Where to? Ms. Thorne? Leo asked, meeting my eyes in the rear-view mirror. His gaze was steady, neutral, devoid of pity. It was why I kept him on. The peninsula. Please, Leo. As the car pulled smoothly away from the curb, I reached into my tote and pulled out a slender tablet. The world outside the tinted windows blurred into a sun-bleached streak. My heart was not racing. My hands were not shaking. There was only a profound, focused stillness. I opened a banking app. The interface was clean, blue, and impersonal. I typed in a series of passwords, then a final authorization code sent to a secure device in Meredith's office. The screen loaded. There they were. The joint accounts. The checking account we used for household expenses. The savings account for vacations we never took. The high-yield money market account where bonuses and windfalls landed. The total balance glowed on the screen, $2,847,611. 33. $2.8 million. The liquid remains of a decade of a life built together. A life he had pissed away on secret gambling debts, bad investments, and a girl in a white dress. My finger hovered over the screen. I thought of the diamond, flashing on Sophie's finger. I thought of his triumphant smile. I thought of the years of quiet compromises, of swallowed words, of being the steady, sensible background to his glittering, unstable foreground. I tapped transfer. I selected to linked external account. I chose the account, a new, high-security trust in my name only, set up by Meredith weeks ago for this exact moment. I entered the amount, $2,847,611. 33. A dialog box appeared. Are you sure? I was sure. I tapped confirm. A spinning wheel. A second of latency that felt like an eternity. Then, a green check mark. Transfer successful. The joint account balance now read $0. 00. A text alert chimed on Evan's phone. Still in his pocket as he posed for pictures with his new fiancée. Alert, a transfer of $2,847,611. 33 has been made from joint account 40 for 92. Available balance, $0. 00. I switched apps. Opening my email. I typed a quick, pre-drafted message to my real estate attorney. CCing Meredith. David, as discussed. Evan has vacated the premises. Please proceed immediately with the change of locks and security codes on both the Beverly Hills and Malibu properties. File the quitclaim deeds as discussed. Full asset freeze on all associated accounts, utilities, landscaping, pool maintenance, pending transfer to my name exclusively. Effective 4 p.m. today. Access is revoked. Regards, Clara. I hit send. Then, I opened my messaging app. Evan's name was at the top. Our last exchange was from a week ago. Logistical nonsense about forwarding mail. I typed a new message. My thumbs moved calmly. Precisely. Over the glass screen. Enjoy the ring. I paused. Then added, the houses and accounts are mine now. I hit send. The whoosh sound was satisfyingly final. I leaned back against the cream-colored leather seat. The tablet darkening in my lap. I looked out the window. We were on the freeway now. The city sprawling in a haze of smog and possibility. The courthouse. The diamond. The kiss. They were receding into the past. A grotesque diorama I'd driven away from. My phone, resting on the seat beside me, lit up. The screen showed an incoming call. Evan. I watched it ring. The vibration was a soft, angry buzz against the leather. Once. Twice. 3 times. It went to voicemail. A second later. It lit up again. Evan. Again. I watched. The rings. The silence. A text bubble popped up. Then another. They came in rapid succession. A staccato burst of digital panic. What the fuck, Clara? Where is the money? Answer your phone. This isn't funny. The account is empty. Call me. No, he didn't answer. I didn't read beyond the previews. I simply reached over, tapped the screen, and selected his contact. I scrolled down. Block caller. A confirmation popped up. Block Evan. I tapped block. The phone went dark and quiet. The only sound was the soft hum of the car's engine and the faint whisper of the air conditioning. Leo's eyes met mine in the mirror again. A question in them. Everything all right? Ms. Thorne. I looked out at the city rushing by. At my new life. Unspooling ahead of me on an empty freeway. Yes. Leo, I said. My voice quiet and clear in the silent car. Everything is perfectly all right. And for the first time in a very, very long time. I meant it. The peninsula Beverly Hills welcomed me with a silence that was a living thing. It was the opposite of the house in Benedict Canyon, that museum of a home where every tick of the grandfather clock echoed a failure. Where the sheer scale of the rooms seemed to mock the shrinking of our shared life. Here, in the presidential suite, the silence was expensive, hushed, and utterly mine. The only sound was the faint, distant hum of the city, a white noise lullaby 15 stories below. Leo had deposited my single Rimowa suitcase, packed with essentials. The rest of my life boxed and in a secure storage unit under a name not my own, by the door. The suite was a study in beige and cream, all soft textures and discreet luxury. A floor-to-ceiling window presented a postcard view of the hazy Los Angeles skyline. The Hollywood sign a faint smudge in the distance. I didn't look at it. I walked to the minibar, a sleek, walnut-paneled cabinet, and poured 2 fingers of Macallan 18 into a heavy crystal tumbler. The amber liquid caught the late afternoon light. I didn't drink it. I held the cool glass, feeling its weight, its solidity. My phone, face down on the Carrara marble side table, began to dance. A soft, insistent vibration against the stone. I didn't need to look. I knew the rhythm. Evan. It stopped. A beat of silence. Then it started again. A frantic, a rhythmic staccato now. Text notifications, one after another, popping up on the locked screen like digital hives. Clara, this is beyond. Call me. You can't just steal my money, the keycards don't work. I'm standing outside my own damn house, I'm calling Meredith. This is illegal. Answer your goddamn phone. I took the first sip of the scotch. It burned a smooth, welcome path down my throat. I placed the glass down, picked up the phone, and without looking at the screen, held down the side button. The screen went black. I powered it off completely. The silence that followed was profound, dizzying. The tablet, however, glowed with a soft, patient light. The real work was just beginning. Divorce was a legal severance. What came next was a digital exorcism. I sat at the ornate writing desk, the tablet propped before me. I pulled a slim, encrypted notebook from my bag, passwords, security questions, account numbers, all in a neat, handwritten cipher Evan had never seen, never cared to see. My father, a man who believed in gold, guns, and good passwords, had drilled that into me. The modern world dies by the password. Clara, guard yours like your life. I started with the obvious. Social media. Facebook. Our profile picture was a decade old, taken on a sailboat in Santorini. We looked wind-whipped, happy, impossibly young. I was squinting against the sun. He was laughing. His armor-tanned weight around my shoulders. A lie preserved in digital amber. I navigated to the relationship status. Married to Evan Evans. A click. A drop-down menu. Single. Another click. A confirmation. Are you sure you want to change your status to single? I was sure. I clicked. Then, remove from friends. A search, Evan Evans. His profile popped up. A recent photo of him at a Lakers game. Grinning. Remove friend. Confirm. He was gone from my list. Untagged from 1,247 photos. A decade of curated life. Severed with 2 clicks. I went to my photos. Created an album, to review. Dragged every picture with him in it there. Later, I would decide, delete, or keep them as a reminder of the woman I used to be. The credulous fool who believed in forever. For now, they were in quarantine. Instagram. This was Sophie's domain. Her gallery of aspirational living. My account was private. Sparse. Pictures of art. Of architecture. Of a perfectly plated meal at Providence. A few of us. At black tie events. My smile not quite reaching my eyes. I went to my followers. Evan Evans. Remove follower. Block. I went to the people I followed. Evan Evans. Unfollow. I changed my username. Clara Thorne was gone. Now it was C. Thorne. 917. A random number. A ghost. I changed the profile picture from a shot of me at the Huntington Library to a simple, stark image of a Brancusi sculpture, a smooth, abstract form. Impenetrable and self-contained. LinkedIn. Easy. Remove connection. Venmo. PayPal. Zelle. Unlinked his accounts. Removed his emails. Changed all authentication. Netflix. Hulu. Amazon Prime. HBO Max. Changed passwords. Logged out of all devices. Let him try to watch Succession tonight and get the too many screens error. A small, petty victory. I savored it. Our shared iTunes account. A library of 4,892 songs. Playlists with names like Road Trip 2017 and Sunday Chill. I didn't delete it. I simply changed the password and the associated email. The playlists would still be there. Fossilized. A musical monument to a dead relationship. Let him wonder what happened to his access. Let him miss the music. I moved on to the serious stuff. Bank accounts. Credit cards. Investment portfolios. I'd already drained the joint accounts. Now, I systematically removed him as an authorized user from every credit card. The Amex Platinum. The Chase Sapphire Reserve. The Neiman Marcus card he used to buy her that ridiculously oversized Valentino bag last Christmas. Click. Confirm. Click. Confirm. I half imagined him. standing outside the locked gates of the Beverly Hills house, trying to buy a bottle of water at a 7-Eleven and having his card declined. The thought was a small, cold ember in my chest. I opened the portal for our family office, a boutique firm that had managed the Evans Thorne assets. My father's money, shrewdly invested, had formed the bedrock. My work as an art consultant had built upon it. Evans' investments had been a sieve. I typed a secure message to our portfolio manager, Arthur Finch. Arthur, as per the final judgment, copy attached. All joint financial management is terminated effective immediately. Please separate the holdings per the schedule drafted by Meredith Shaw. All future communications and disbursements for my assets are to go solely to me. Evan Evans is to have no further access to any accounts, statements, or trading authority. Please confirm receipt and initiate the separation protocol. Clara Thorne. I attached the divorce decree. I knew Finch, a man of supreme discretion and deep-seated misandry when it came to financially incontinent husbands, would execute it with Germanic efficiency. The separation protocol was a brutal, line-by-line dissection of every stock, bond, and fund. It would take weeks, but the freeze was instant. My phone, powered off, lay inert. My tablet buzzed. A secure message from Meredith. All locksmiths deployed. Codes changed at both properties. Security system passcodes reset. Your biometrics are the only ones registered. Alarm company notified. If he tries to breach, Lapt will be there before he scales the gate. Malibu housekeeper, Maria, confirmed he arrived with the fiancé. They were denied entry. A scene was made. She is loyal to you. Has been paid a substantial bonus to maintain the property and report any attempts at access. The scene, per Maria, was patetico. A smile, thin and sharp, touched my lips. I could see it. Evan, red-faced, jabbing at a keypad that no longer recognized his fingerprint. Sophie, hovering in her stupid white dress, the diamond now looking more like a shackle in the fading Malibu light. Patetico. Perfect. I typed back. Thank you. Proceed with Phase 2. Phase 2 was the staff. The invisible army that kept our lives running on silent, well-oiled wheels. Carlos, the groundskeeper. Anya, the sommelier and event planner. James, the pilot of the share-held jet. Dr. Alden, the dermatologist who made house calls. Alan, the chef we used for dinner parties. A list of 24 names. All paid from the household accounts I had just zeroed out and re-established under my name alone. I drafted a group email. Not from my personal account. From a new, impersonal address, Thorne. management@securemail.com. Dear team, please be advised of a change in management effective immediately. All future engagements, scheduling, and compensation for services rendered to Clara Thorne will be handled through this office. Previous points of contact and payment methods are no longer valid. Your discretion during this transition is valued and will be reflected in your continued engagement. A retention bonus will be processed this week for your cooperation. Please reply to this address to confirm receipt and provide updated W-9 forms for our records. Sincerely, Clara Thorne Management. I sent it. Within minutes, replies began to trickle in, polite, professional, devoid of curiosity. Confirmed. Thank you, Ms. Thorne. Understood. They were mercenaries. In the best sense. Their loyalty was to the hand that signed the check. That hand was now exclusively mine. Evan wouldn't be able to get his shirts laundered, let alone book a last-minute trip to Cabo. The scotch was gone. The sky outside had deepened to a bruised purple. The first pinpricks of city lights appearing. My tablet buzzed again. This time, it was a calendar alert. 6:30 p.m., media inquiry, Lila Sharp. LA Star. Right on time. The vultures, drawn by the scent of public scandal. Lila Sharp was the worst of them, a gossip columnist with the soul of a tapeworm and a readership that loved nothing more than the rich eating their own. My personal cell was off, but Meredith had given the hotel a dedicated, temporary landline number for this purpose. It rang now. A sharp, old-fashioned sound in the sleek room. I let it ring 3 times. I picked up. This is Clara. Clara. Lila Sharp. LA Star. Thanks for taking my call. Her voice was a familiar, sugary chirp, layered over a core of cold steel. Big day for you. Congratulations. Or, condolences. Which is it? It's a day of legal conclusion. Lila, I said. My voice neutral. I'm not sure it requires sentiment. She laughed. A brittle sound. Always so composed. Listen. We've got some incredible footage from outside the courthouse. Evan. Down on one knee. The whole shebang. The ring is, wow. A real statement piece. Care to comment on the timing? 20 minutes seems quick. I could see the headline already. Disgraced heir moves on at warp speed, or perhaps, from divorce to devotion in 20 minutes flat. Mr. Evans's personal timeline is his own business, I said, watching a plane's blinking lights crawl across the darkening sky. My focus is on my future. Right. But the optics? Clara. It's quite a public rebuke. Any reaction to seeing that? It must have stung. I let the silence stretch for a beat. 2 beats. Long enough for her to wonder if the line had gone dead. Lila, I said finally, my voice dropping a degree cooler. Are you asking me if I have feelings about my ex-husband's engagement? Hours after our divorce was finalized. To a woman with whom he's been photographed for the better part of a year. Is that the question? She stammered. Well, it's a human interest story. Clara. Our readers want to know how you're feeling. Then you can quote me as follows, I said. My words crisp and precise. Mr. Evans and I are legally divorced. I wish him happiness with his new fiancée. I have no further comment on his personal life. My attorneys have advised me that the financial and property matters of the divorce are settled. And I am looking forward to a private future. That's the statement. Is that sufficient human interest for you? The sugar was gone from her voice now. All business. It's a statement. Off the record. Clara. Come on. Between us girls. He screwed you over. Publicly. Aren't you even a little bit pissed? Off the record. Lila? I said softly. Between us girls. I'm hanging up now. Have a good evening. I placed the receiver back in its cradle. It was a gesture of finality I hadn't felt with the phone's end call button. A physical severance. I powered my personal phone back on. It exploded to life, a waterfall of notifications. Missed calls, 14 from Evan. 3 from numbers I didn't recognize, his lawyers. Probably. 2 from Bradley. His damp-browed attorney. Voicemails, 8. Texts, 47. I scrolled past them. They were variations on a theme: rage, panic, pleading, more rage. There was one from a number I did know. My sister, Amanda, in New York. Saw the news. Are you alive? Do I need to fly out there and murder him with a stiletto? Call me. Love you. A genuine warmth. The first of the day. Thawed a little of the ice in my veins. I typed back. Alive. More than. We'll call tomorrow. Don't murder. Yet. Love you more. I stood. My back stiff from hours at the desk. I walked to the massive window. Pressing my forehead against the cool glass. The city glittered below. A vast circuit board of lives. Somewhere out there. Evan was scrambling. Somewhere. Sophie was probably staring at her new rock. The reality of her situation dawning like a terrible sunrise. Somewhere. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, was likely already on the phone. Her voice a weaponized drawl. My reflection in the glass stared back at me, a woman in a perfectly tailored cream suit. Her blonde hair swept into a chignon that hadn't frayed. Her makeup still impeccable. The picture of composure. The ice queen. The heartless bitch who cleaned out the accounts. Let them think it. The tablet chimed again. A news alert. LA Star breaking. Evan Evans proposes to mystery woman minutes after divorce finalized. I clicked it. There it was. The video. Autoplaying. The courthouse steps. The kneel. The ring. The kiss. The cameras had caught me too. A blurry figure in the background. Sliding into a black car. The caption, Clara Thorne, ex-wife, departs the scene moments before the proposal. The article was Lila's work. Of course. It rehashed the whirlwind romance of Evan and Sophie, the surprise divorce, the stunning public proposal. It mentioned my no comment and included my full statement. It was frothy, sensational, and utterly devoid of the financial earthquake that had just occurred. They had the glitter. They didn't have the ledger. I closed the browser. I didn't need to read the comments. I could imagine them. Gold digger gets what she deserves, good for him. Moving on, she looks like a cold fish. No wonder he left, let them talk. I turned away from the window. From the glittering, judgmental city. The suite was dark now. I didn't turn on the lights. I stood in the middle of the vast, silent room. In the space I had carved out for myself with clicks and passwords and cold, hard transfers. The digital guillotine had fallen. Every tie, every shared password, every point of access had been severed. The life of Clara Evans was archived, quarantined, deleted. The life of Clara Thorne was a blank screen, waiting for input. My phone buzzed one last time. Another text from an unknown number. Not Evans. This one was shorter, more desperate. Clara, it's Sophie. We need to talk. Please. I stared at the message. The audacity. The sheer, breathtaking gall. I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat. Harsh and unexpected. It echoed in the empty, luxurious room. I deleted the message. I blocked the number. Then, I poured another inch of scotch, walked to the balcony, and stepped out into the warm, smog-scented night. The noise of the city rose up to meet me, a chaotic, living symphony of horns and sirens and distant music. I lifted my glass to it, to the mess, to the chaos, to the glorious, terrifying silence I had created for myself. To new beginnings, I whispered to the night air. And for the first time, I drank alone. And it tasted not of loneliness, but of a promise. The promise of a life that was finally, irrevocably, my own. The scotch had done its work, sanding down the sharpest edges of the day, leaving behind a smooth, humming clarity. I'd ordered a simple dinner from the hotel kitchen, a salad, a piece of grilled fish, and eaten it on the balcony. The city lights are sprawling, indifferent tapestry below. The silence was a balm. For the first time in years, no one was going to call. No one was going to need something. No one was going to be disappointed. The only demands were my own. I'd just settled into the plush embrace of the sweet sofa. A biography of Catherine de Medici open but unread on my lap. When the first call came, the hotel phone, the temporary line, rang with its polite, muted trill. 9:07 p.m. I let it ring. It went to the generic voicemail. A minute later, my personal cell, now unblocked for strategic reasons, lit up. The screen displayed a name that was a relic of a different life, Eleanor Evans. My mother-in-law. Or rather, my former mother-in-law. The Queen of Hancock Park. The dragon guarding the Evans family vault. A woman who treated bloodlines like thoroughbred pedigrees and money like holy water. I'd always been a slight disappointment to Eleanor. My family had money. Yes. But it was new money. Tech money. Earned by my father's patents. Not inherited through generations of genteel exploitation. I lacked the right breeding. The casual, ingrained sense of entitlement that came from never having to ask the price. I watched the phone vibrate itself silent. I knew the script. Eleanor's first move would be imperious concern. Darling. I just saw the most dreadful news. Are you quite alright? The subtext. How could you let this happen to our family? The phone lit up again. Eleanor Evans. I sipped my water. The biography of Catherine de Medici. A woman who knew a thing or two about holding power in a nest of vipers. Suddenly seemed more relevant than ever. The third call came in quick succession. Then, a pause. I could picture her in the opulent, chintz-filled silence of her Hancock Park mansion. Her perfectly contoured lips pressed into a thin, furious line. She'd be pacing on an Isfahan rug worth more than most people's cars. The cordless phone looking absurdly quaint in her bejeweled hand. She despised cell phones, calling them common leashes. The landline was a weapon of her generation. My phone buzzed, not with a call, but with a voicemail notification. Then another. And another. The dam had broken. For the next 45 minutes, my phone was a pulsating, buzzing heart of panic on the glass coffee table. It would light up, shudder with Eleanor's name, go dark for a breathless 2 or 3 minutes, then ignite again. The rhythm was manic, escalating. After the 10th missed call, the voicemails began to pile up. The notification ticker climbed. 5, 12, 22, 31. I didn't answer. I didn't listen. I sat in the calm eye of her hurricane, the silence of the suite deepening with each frantic ring. This was the sound of a world order crumbling, transmitted via ATT. It was, in its own way, symphonic. At 9:52 p.m., the calls stopped. A final, definitive silence fell. She had either given up, or her vocal cords had given out. I looked at the screen. 45 missed calls. 45 voicemails. I refilled my water glass. I took a long, slow breath. Then, I picked up the phone, entered my passcode, and navigated to voicemail. I plugged in my earbuds. This required audio. I needed to hear every tremor, every crack in the porcelain facade. I pressed play on the first message. Clara, darling. It's Eleanor. Her voice was pitched in its usual register, cultured, slightly nasal, a tone that could wither flowers at 30 paces. It was strained, however, a tightness around the vowels. I've just had the most bewildering call from Evan. His inner state, absolutely beside himself. Something about the house keys, and some nonsense with the bank. I'm sure it's all a dreadful misunderstanding. You know how he gets when he's emotional. Do call me back, dear. We'll have tea and sort this out. Chin up. Click. Message 2. 3 minutes later, the darling was gone. Clara, it's Eleanor again. Evan is here now. He's saying you've frozen him out of everything. The Malibu house. The accounts. This is unseemly. I understand you're hurt. We all are. But this isn't how we do things. We're a family. We handle our affairs with discretion. Call me. Immediately. The we was telling. The royal we. The Evans family we. I was no longer part of it. Message 5. The strain was becoming a crack. Are you ignoring me? I've tried the hotel. They won't put me through. This is outrageous. Clara, you listen to me. What is this about you taking the money? Our money? My money is in those accounts. The quarterly distributions for the foundation. You cannot just, a breath. Sharp and audible. She was trying to reel herself in. We need to speak. Now. Message 8. The Polish was chipping. My lawyer is on the other line. Do you have any idea the position you're putting me in? The embarrassment. The foundation gala is in 6 weeks. The caterers. The venue. The funds are supposed to clear tomorrow. You've frozen the operating account. This isn't about you and Evan's little spat. This is about my reputation. The Evans family reputation. There it was. Not concern for her son. Concern for the cash flow. The Eleanor Evans Charitable Foundation for the Arts was her life's work. Her ticket to social sainthood. It was also, not so incidentally, a beautifully opaque vehicle for tax write-offs and a steady source of income for her. Disguised as a director's stipend, the operating account was a joint one I'd funded for years. For the sake of appearances, I'd frozen it that afternoon. Message 12. Panic was seeping through. Clara, please pick up. Her voice had dropped. It was almost a whisper, ragged at the edges. You don't understand. Those accounts. Evan manages, there are things, obligations, things that can't wait. You have to unlock them. Just for tonight. Let me get the foundation sorted. Then we can talk about the rest. You can't do this. You have no right. Message 18. Anger and fear in a toxic mix. You vicious little cunt. The word, delivered in that brittle, upper-crust accent, was a shock. I'd never heard her use profanity stronger than damn. You greedy, social climbing cunt. You think you can steal from us? From me? I made you. I welcomed you into this family when you were nothing but a Silicon Valley brat with a trust fund and no class. And this is how you repay me? By robbing me blind. Message 25. The bargaining was back. Desperate now. Clara. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I'm upset. We're all upset. Look. Let's be reasonable. What do you want? A larger settlement? We can talk to Bradley. We can make this right. Just don't cut off the foundation. The children's hospital wing, think of the children. She was using her own charity, her own pet project, as a human shield. It was nauseating. Message 33. Hysteria was winning. He says the Malibu house is empty. The staff is gone. The codes don't work. Where is Maria? I need to get into the wine cellar. The 45 Mutan is in there. And the jewelry. My mother's emeralds are in the safe. My God. Clara. You wouldn't. You couldn't. Those are family heirlooms. They don't belong to you. They have nothing to do with you and Evan, the jewels. Of course. The famous Evan's emeralds. A necklace. Earrings. A bracelet. And a ring that supposedly once graced the neck of some minor European royal. They were hideous. In my opinion, gaudy. Old world rocks in outdated settings. But to Eleanor, they were the crown jewels. The physical proof of the Evans lineage. She'd never let me wear them. Of course. They're for blood descendants. Darling, she'd said once. Patting my hand. One day. Perhaps. If you give me a granddaughter. They'd been kept in the secure vault at the Malibu house. A place she considered an extension of her own domain. A vault whose combination I had changed that afternoon. Message 40. She was sobbing. Great. Ragged. Unladylike gulps of air. They're calling the loans. Do you hear me? The margin calls. Evan, my foolish boy, he used the portfolio as collateral. For God knows what. Those tech investments. That ridiculous Girls Brothers company, it's all gone. And now the bank is calling. They're going to take everything. You have to release the funds. You have to cover the call. Just until we can liquidate. Please. Clara. I'm begging you. On my late husband's memory. I am begging you. The final piece of the puzzle slammed into place with the force of a physical blow. I sat up straight. The biography tumbling to the floor. Margin calls. Evan hadn't just been skimming from our accounts for his gambling and his mistress. He'd been using the family investment portfolio, the one that contained not just our money, but Eleanor's capital, the foundation's endowment, everything, as collateral for his disastrous side ventures. He'd taken out loans against assets that weren't solely his to risk. And whatever he'd sunk the money into, Sophie's brother's tech startup, no doubt, had cratered. The banks wanted their money. And with the divorce, with the accounts frozen, with the assets being legally divided and locked down, there was no liquidity to meet the call. He hadn't just bankrupted himself. He'd bankrupted his mother. Message 44. The voice was a hollow, broken thing. All pretense was gone. They'll take the house. My house. My mother's house. They'll take the paintings. The silver. They'll take it all. And the scandal, the papers. Clara. You have to help me. You're the only one with liquid capital now. You have the money from the accounts. Please. I'll do anything. I'll make him give you anything. Just, don't let them take my home. The raw terror in her voice was palpable. It wasn't just about money. It was about her identity. The Hancock Park mansion wasn't a house, it was her throne room. To lose it would be a social death more profound than any physical one. The last message, number 45, was different. The hysteria was gone, burned away. What was left was a cold, stark hatred, condensed into a venomous whisper. You did this. You planned this. You let him make a fool of himself with that shop girl. You let him propose. You knew. You wanted him to do it. So you could do this. So you could destroy us. You're a spider. Clara. A patient, poisonous spider. And we walked right into your web. But listen to me. You will not win. I will see you in hell before I let you take what's mine. You have no idea who you're dealing with. No idea. Click. Silence. The playback ended. I slowly pulled the earbuds out. The quiet of the suite rushed back in. But it was different now. It was charged. electric with the aftermath of that verbal lightning storm. I sat for a long time, motionless. The pieces swirled and settled. Evan's desperation wasn't just about being locked out of his beach house. It was about a financial avalanche he'd set in motion. And I'd just removed the only barrier in its path. Eleanor's panic wasn't just about a charity gala or even her jewelry. It was about the imminent, humiliating collapse of her entire world. I'd thought I was cutting ties. I was, in fact, pulling a loose thread that was unraveling the whole Evans tapestry. A strange calm settled over me. The guilt I might have expected, the twinge of pity for the sobbing woman on the other end of the phone, didn't come. What came was a clean, sharp focus. She was right about one thing. I had planned. Not this. Not exactly. I hadn't known about the margin calls, the depth of Evan's stupidity. But I had planned to protect myself. To reclaim what was mine. Their house of cards was collapsing because it was built on sand and lies and my money. I had simply stopped being the foundation. I picked up the phone. I navigated to the last message. From Eleanor. I didn't replay it. I selected it. And the 44 that preceded it. I selected, save all. I connected the phone to my tablet and uploaded the audio files to a secure, encrypted cloud drive. Evidence. I labeled the folder. Eleanor Evans. The 15th of September 2026. Then, I opened a fresh email. I typed Eleanor's personal address. The one she'd had since the dawn of the internet. The subject line was simple. Your messages. I didn't type a long reply. I didn't justify, explain, or defend. I simply wrote 2 sentences. Eleanor, your son chose his new fiancée. You and your emeralds are not my concern. Clara. I paused, my finger hovering over the send button. Then I added a 3rd sentence. Cold and final. Any further communication should be directed to my attorney, Meredith Shaw. Her contact information is below. I attached Meredith's V-card. I hit send. The whoosh sound was a guillotine blade falling. Almost instantly, my phone lit up again. Not a call. A text. From a different number. Evan's sister. Amelia. Mom is having a full-blown meltdown. What the hell did you do? I didn't reply. I blocked Amelia's number too. I stood and walked back to the balcony. The night was deep and velvety. Somewhere in the glittering grid of Hancock Park. In a mansion filled with heirlooms and hatred. A woman was staring at her phone. Reading my 3-line missive. And realizing that the world as she knew it was over. I felt no joy. No schadenfreude. Only a vast, empty certainty. The war I had prepared for was already over. I had won it with a series of mouse clicks and a bank transfer. The battles to come, the legal skirmishes, the social salvos, the desperate, flailing attacks of the ruined, would just be mopping up. I looked at my own reflection in the dark glass. The woman who stared back was unchanged on the surface, perfectly composed. But her eyes held a new knowledge. She knew the sound of a dynasty cracking. It sounded like 45 desperate voicemails. And then, like silence, I went back inside, closed the balcony door, and turned the lock with a soft, definitive click. The world and its noise was shut out. In the pristine quiet of my expensive room, I picked up Catherine de Medici's biography, found my page, and began to read. Sleep, when it finally came, was a shallow, restless thing. It wasn't Eleanor's harangue that played on a loop behind my eyes. I'd made peace with that declaration of war. It was the raw, exposed nerve of that word, margin. It echoed in the dark. A financial term that felt as violent as a gunshot. Evan hadn't just been unfaithful and frivolous, he'd been criminally stupid. He'd used the family portfolio, our portfolio, the bedrock of the life we'd ostensibly built, as a personal ATM for his catastrophic bets. The magnitude of the betrayal was so vast it felt abstract. A black hole whose edges I was only beginning to fathom. The soft, persistent chime of the hotel phone dragged me from a thin, dreamless haze. The digital clock glowed 1:17 a.m. I fumbled for the receiver. My throat dry. Ms. Thorne? I apologize for the late hour. It was the night manager. His voice a hushed, professional baritone. There's a A young woman in the lobby. Ms. Sophie Carmichael. She's insisting on seeing you. She's quite distressed. Our policy is to not disturb. But she is making a scene. Sophie. Here. In the middle of the night. Distressed. The fog of sleep evaporated. Replaced by a sharp, needle-like clarity. I sat up. The silk sheets pooling around me. What kind of scene? Crying. Primarily. She's refusing to leave. She says it's a matter of life and death. I could hear the faintest hint of skepticism in his perfectly trained voice. Shall I have security escort her out? Every instinct screamed yes. To have her removed. To let her drown in the consequences of her own choices. She was the face of my humiliation. The honey blonde proof of my failure. Seeing her was the last thing I wanted. But another part of me, the cold, curious strategist, was intrigued. Why was Sophie Carmichael, newly minted fiancée, dripping in a diamond that likely cost more than her annual salary, sobbing in the lobby of the Peninsula at 1 a.m.? Where was her knight in tarnished armor? Why was she here? And not with him. Celebrating their glorious new beginning, send her up, I heard myself say. The words felt foreign in my mouth. Ms. Thorne. Are you certain? It's highly irregular. Quite certain. Send her up. And send a pot of coffee, please. Black. Very well. She'll be up shortly. I hung up and swung my legs out of bed. I didn't change out of my silk pajamas, a midnight blue set. Simple and expensive. A robe felt like too much of a concession. An admission that this was a social call. I ran a hand through my hair. Glanced in the mirror. I looked pale. Tired. But composed. The armor, though soft, was still on. A soft knock came at the door precisely 3 minutes later. I opened it. Sophie looked like a party decoration left out in the rain. The pristine white dress from the courthouse steps was rumpled. Stained with what looked like red wine or maybe tears near the hem. Her perfect, beachy waves were a tangled mess. Her makeup was a smudged tragedy of kohl and mascara trails. The diamond on her left hand, a vulgar, sparkling tumor, caught the hallway sconce light and threw gaudy prisms across the wall. She was shivering, though the night was warm. Her eyes, red-rimmed and puffy, met mine. They held none of the triumphant glee from the courthouse steps. They held pure, unadulterated panic. Clara. Thank you. Thank you for seeing me, she stammered. Her voice thick. I said nothing. I simply stepped back, holding the door open in silent invitation. She scurried in, her heels clicking a frantic, uneven rhythm on the marble floor. She smelled of stale champagne, cigarette smoke, and despair. I closed the door and walked past her to the sitting area. The coffee had arrived. A silver pot on a tray with 2 cups. I poured one for myself, not offering her any. I sat in a high-backed armchair, crossing my legs, and took a slow sip. The bitterness was grounding. She stood in the middle of the room, awkward, clutching a tiny beaded purse as if it were a life preserver. She looked around the suite, her gaze taking in the sweeping view, the elegant furniture, the profound, expensive silence. I saw the calculation in her eyes. Even now, the assessment of square footage, of thread count, of the unspoken value of peace. Sit, Sophie, I said, my voice flat. You're making the room anxious. She flinched but obeyed, perching on the very edge of the sofa opposite me. The diamond caught the light again. A garish wink. I didn't know where else to go, she began, the words tumbling out in a rush. He's gone. I mean, he's at some bar. Or maybe his friend's place. I don't know. He threw his phone against the wall. He's not answering. And the bank called me. I took another sip of coffee. The bank. Yes. My bank. Wells Fargo. They said the check he gave me for the wedding planner. The deposit. It bounced. It was for $25,000. Her voice rose to a hysterical pitch. And then I called the jeweler. Just to verify something. And they said the ring is on a payment plan. A layaway plan. He put 5% down. 5. The rest is due in 90 days or they repossess it. A sob tore from her throat. He told me it was paid for. He told me he'd sold a boat. I almost smiled. A payment plan. Of course. Evan's entire life was a payment plan he'd never intended to honor. That sounds like an issue between you and your fiancé, I said, setting my cup down with a soft click. I'm not sure why it's my concern at 1 a.m. She stared at me as if I'd spoken in tongues. Your concern? Clara. His broke. His not just broke. His in debt. Like, deep, scary debt. He was counting on that money. The money you took. He said it was just a formality. That the accounts were his. That you'd never have the guts to. She trailed off, seeing something in my face. That I'd never have the guts to what? I prompted, my voice dangerously soft. To take what was legally and morally at least half mine. To not stand by politely while he funded his engagement to you with my inheritance. She winced. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Sophie? I leaned forward. Just an inch. Enlighten me. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you were sleeping with my husband, flaunting it all over town, and then decided to help him spend my money on a ring you're now worried you'll have to give back. It looks remarkably straightforward. Tears spilled over again, cutting fresh tracks through the ruined makeup. You don't understand. He told me it was over. He said you had an arrangement. That you were basically separated for years. That it was just a financial formality. He said you were cold. That you didn't love him. That you were just waiting for the right time to make it official without hurting the family's investments. The old, familiar lie. The one he'd probably used on every girl before her. The understanding wife trope. It was astonishing how effective it was. How willing people were to believe the worst of the woman they were wronging. Just to feel better about their own complicity. And you believed him, I stated. No question in my voice. He loved me, she cried, the sound pathetic and small in the spacious room. He said I was different. He said I made him feel alive again. He was going to leave you. He promised. He did leave me, I said. Today. Legally. And it appears he left you holding a repossession notice and a bounced check. Congratulations. You won. The cruelty of the words hung in the air. She looked as if I'd slapped her. Maybe I had. Sometimes truth is a physical force. Why are you here? Sophie? I asked. When the silence had stretched thin. What do you want from me? Sympathy? A loan? A referral to a good pawnbroker for that rock on your finger? She looked down at the diamond, as if seeing it for the first time. The symbol of her triumph now looked like a shackle. She twisted it. A nervous, frantic gesture. I need to know what to do. I laughed then. A short, sharp, mirthless sound. What to do? You march into my life, help destroy my marriage, and then come to me for advice on how to clean up the mess. That's audacious. Even for you. I'm scared, she whispered. And for the first time, I heard genuine, unvarnished fear. Not just performative panic. He's not the man I thought he was. The things he said tonight. After everything blew up. The way he looked at me. It was like he hated me. Like this was all my fault. I'm sure it is. In his mind, I said. Picking up my coffee again. The cup was warm against my palm. In Evan's world, consequences are always someone else's fault. Usually mine. Now. Apparently. Yours. She swallowed. Hard. He said the money problems were bigger than I knew. That his mother was involved. That there were loans. That if he didn't get liquid cash, they'd lose everything. The houses. The cars, his mother's house. He said it was my brother's fault. That the startup was a black hole. Ah. So she knew. At least a version of it. The margin call had fangs. And they were sinking into her now. Too. Your brother, I said. As if just remembering. Kyle. Right? The disruptor with the crypto meets wellness app. Evan invested in that, she nodded miserably. 200,000. At first. Then more. A lot more. He said it was a sure thing. He said Kyle was a genius. She buried her face in her hands. Kyle's in Bali. He won't answer his phone either. The website is down. It's all gone. The pieces clicked into place with a satisfying, terrible finality. The gambling debts I'd found traces of were just the tip. The real iceberg was Sophie's brother. A charlatan with a nice smile and a pitch deck. And Evan, the eternal mark, desperate to prove he was more than a well-dressed heir. A captain of industry instead of just a consumer. He'd sunk not just his own funds, but leveraged the family's entire fortune on a fantasy. And he'd done it, in part, to impress this girl now sobbing on my sofa. So you see the situation, I said, my voice devoid of any pity. Your fiancé is not a wealthy, romantic hero. He's a bankrupt fool who used his family's legacy as collateral for bad bets. One of which was you. The money he promised you. The life he sold you. Doesn't exist. It probably never did. She looked up. Her eyes wide with a dawning, horrified understanding. The wedding, the planner. The venue in Santa Barbara, it's all on my credit card. The deposits, I put them on my card. He said he'd pay me back as soon as the divorce was final and he had access to his money. I finished for her. Yes, I'm aware of the plan. The full weight of it crashed down on her. Her face, already pale, went ashen. She wasn't just the other woman. She was the mark. She'd been played just as thoroughly as I had. Only she'd been offered a diamond-coated lie instead of a diamond-coated truth. Oh, God, she breathed. Oh, my God. What have I done? What you've done, I said, standing up, signaling the audience was over, is make a series of very poor choices based on the word of a very bad man. Welcome to the club. Dues are high, and the meetings are miserable. She looked up at me, a desperate, lost child. What do I do? Clara, please. I have nothing. My credit cards are maxed. My rent is due. I can't go back to him. I'm scared of him now. And there it was. The final, ugly layer. The fear. It wasn't just financial. Evan's charm had a flip side, a petulant, volatile rage that emerged when he was cornered. I'd seen it directed at waiters, at traffic, at me, when he thought no one was looking. I could only imagine its scale when facing financial ruin. For a fleeting second, a memory surfaced. Me, at 25, not much older than Sophie, dazzled by Evan Evans. The fast cars, the easy laughs, the way he made everything seem like an adventure. I'd seen the cracks. Even then, I'd just chosen to paper over them with love. Or what I'd thought was love. Sophie had papered over them with the glittering promise of a limitless credit line. We were both fools. Just different kinds. The sympathy was faint. A distant, cold star. But it was enough to keep me from throwing her out into the night. I walked to the writing desk, picked up a Peninsula notepad and a pen. I scribbled a name and a number. This is Lorna Chen, I said, tearing off the sheet and holding it out to her. I did not move closer. She's the best family law attorney in the city for people who aren't rich. She works on a sliding scale. Tell her I referred you. She'll get a temporary restraining order if you need it. She'll also know how to deal with the creditors. Maybe negotiate the wedding deposits. It won't save your credit, but it might keep you from being evicted. Sophie stared at the paper as if it were written in a foreign language. A lawyer? But I can't afford. Lorna will work it out. Consider it my parting gift. The word gift tasted like ash, but it comes with a single piece of advice. 1. Listen carefully. She nodded, sniffling, wiping her nose with the back of her hand, a childish gesture that made her look even younger. Take that ring off, I said, my eyes locking onto the glittering stone. Tonight. Go back to the jeweler tomorrow. First thing. Tell them you're returning it. They'll take it back. They deal with this sort of thing more often than you'd think. Use whatever refund you get, after they deduct their restocking fee, to pay Lorna. Do not, under any circumstances, give the money to Evan. Do not let him talk you out of it. Do not believe him if he says he has a new plan. He doesn't. He's a sinking ship. Sophie. And that diamond is an anchor. Cut the line and swim. Her hand flew to the ring, covering it protectively. But, it's my engagement ring. It's all I have left of a lie, I cut in. My voice like a blade. It's a lie set in platinum. It's worth maybe $20,000 after the jeweler takes his cut. Is your self-respect worth less than $20,000? Because that's what you're selling if you keep it. You're selling the last bit of your own narrative. You get to be the girl who was stupid. Or you get to be the girl who was stupid and cheap. Your choice. The brutal truth hung in the air between us. I saw the war on her face, vanity versus survival. The dream versus the cold, hard floor of reality. And then, she whispered. And then you leave, I said, walking to the door and opening it. The hallway beyond was empty. Silent. Awaiting escape route. You leave Los Angeles. You go back to Arizona. Or Ohio. Or wherever you came from. You get a job. You tell everyone it didn't work out. You start over. And you try. Very hard. To be smarter than the last man who promises you the world on a credit card he can't pay for. She stood. Unsteady on her feet. She looked at the piece of paper in her hand. Then at me. Then at the open door. The diamond on her finger seemed to pulse with a cheap, false light. Why are you helping me? She asked. The question so small it was almost lost. I looked at her. This ruined, pretty girl in a stained white dress. Standing in the wreckage of both our lives. She was a symptom, not the disease. Punishing her gave me no pleasure. It was like yelling at a cough when you had pneumonia. I'm not helping you, I said. And my voice was finally, utterly tired. I'm cleaning up. You're a piece of the mess he made. Consider this me taking out the trash. Now go. And don't come back. She flinched as if struck. For a second, a spark of the old Sophie flashed in her eyes, indignant, entitled, but it died as quickly as it came, extinguished by the overwhelming wave of her circumstances. She shuffled past me, the paper clutched in her hand, the diamond still glaring on her finger. She paused in the doorway, half-turned. He never loved you. You know, she said. The words are last, pathetic dagger she hoped would wound. I met her gaze. And I gave her the one smile I had left, small and utterly without warmth. I know, I said softly, but here's the thing. Sophie, he doesn't love you either. The color drained completely from her face. It was the final, killing blow. Her shoulders slumped. Without another word, she turned and walked down the hall, the sound of her uneven footsteps fading into the hum of the hotel. I closed the door. The click of the lock was the loudest sound in the world. I walked to the window. Down in the courtyard, 15 stories below, I saw a tiny figure emerge from the hotel's porte cochere. Sophie. Alone. She stood for a moment under a street lamp. A lost, solitary figure. Then, from the shadows of a potted palm, a flash went off. Then another. A paparazzo. He'd been waiting. He snapped picture after picture of her tear-streaked face, her disheveled dress, her tragic, midnight exit from the scene of her rival's victory. She didn't seem to notice. She just hugged her arms around herself and walked into the night, toward the valet stand, toward whatever came next. I watched until she was swallowed by the darkness. Then I turned away from the window. The suite was silent once more. The coffee was cold. The scent of her cheap perfume and desperate tears still hung in the air. I walked to the minibar, poured 2 fingers of scotch, and downed it in one burning gulp. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't merciful. I was just the last one standing in the room when the music stopped. I'd given Sophie the only charity I had left, the brutal, unvarnished truth. It was more than anyone had ever given me. My phone, charging on the nightstand, buzzed with a news alert. I didn't need to look to know what it was. The pictures were probably already online. Jilted mistress's midnight meltdown, the headlines would scream. Fiancé flees to ex-wife's hotel, let them have their story. Let them feast on her carcass. My war was elsewhere. It was in the margins. In the frozen accounts. In the silent, empty houses that were now mine alone. It was with a matriarch who thought her name was a shield. And a husband who was finally learning the price of his appetites. I set the glass down. The ice in it had long since melted, leaving only tepid water. Like promises. Like dreams. Like the future of a girl in a white dress. walking into the Los Angeles night. Finally, terribly, awake. Dawn broke over Los Angeles not with a sunrise, but with a text. My phone vibrated on the nightstand at 6:03 a.m., the screen casting a cold, blue glow in the dim room. It wasn't Eleanor. It was from the head of hotel security, a man named Rossi whose discretion I'd already paid for. Ms. Thorne, a party has arrived and is demanding access to the executive lounge, citing a family emergency involving you. They are refusing to leave the lobby. The matriarch is insistent, awaiting your instructions. The matriarch. She'd moved from the phone to a frontal assault. Of course she had. Voicemails were for peasants and distant relatives. Eleanor Evans dealt in person. In public. Where social pressure was a cudgel and private humiliation a weapon. The executive lounge was a calculated choice, semi-public. Full of influential people having their morning coffee. A perfect stage for a scene. I typed a reply. My fingers steady. Who is in the party? The three dots danced. Eleanor Evans. Amelia Evans. An older gentleman. Identified as Robert Evans. The tribunal. Eleanor. The furious queen. Amelia. Evans' older sister. A woman whose entire personality was a brittle defense of her family's waning status. And Uncle Robert. Eleanor's brother-in-law. The family's seldom-seen legal attack dog. A corporate litigator from New York with the charm of a stroke and a reputation for crushing opponents through sheer, grinding attrition. They'd brought in the heavy artillery. They thought they could surround me, outnumber me, shame me into compliance in front of an audience of my peers. They thought I'd fold rather than cause a spectacle. They had forgotten one thing. I no longer had anything to lose that they hadn't already taken. I texted back. Escort them to a private meeting room. The Cypress Room. Ensure it is secure. No hotel staff present after beverages are served. I will be down in 15 minutes. Understood. I got out of bed. I moved with a deliberate, unhurried calm. A hot shower. Simple. Understated makeup, armor. Not decoration. I dressed not for battle, but for a boardroom, a tailored black Alexander Wang jumpsuit. Severe lines. No jewelry except for my mother's simple platinum wedding band on my right hand. I twisted my damp hair into a low, tight knot. I looked in the mirror. Cool. Impenetrable. Ready. At 6:25 a.m. I entered the Cypress Room. It was a small, wood-paneled salon off the main lounge, usually used for discreet business meetings. It smelled of lemon oil and old money. A silver coffee service sat untouched on a sideboard. They were already seated around a small conference table. A united front. Eleanor sat at the head, a position she'd claimed by divine right. She was dressed for a funeral, a severe black St. John suit. A single strand of large, creamy pearls. Her makeup was flawless, but it couldn't conceal the ravages of the night. Her eyes were red-rimmed, the skin around them papery and tight. She looked like a beautiful, embalmed cobra. To her right sat Amelia. She'd inherited her mother's sharp bones but none of her discipline. Her expression was pure, pinched outrage. To Eleanor's left was Robert. He was a large, heavy man in a Brooks Brothers suit that strained at the buttons. He had a florid face, small, pale eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and a mouth that seemed permanently set in a disapproving mood. A legal pad and a Mont Blanc pen were laid before him with fetishistic precision. The air in the room was thick with a hostility so potent it felt like a fourth person. Clara, Eleanor said. Her voice was a dry rustle. All the hysterical sobs of the night before burned away, leaving only cold ash. How kind of you to finally grant us an audience. I didn't reply. I walked to the sideboard, poured myself a cup of black coffee, and took the seat at the opposite end of the table from her. I took a slow, deliberate sip. The message was clear. This was my territory. I was the host. They were the supplicants. Amelia broke first. Where is he? Clara? Where's Evan? He's not answering his phone. His car is still at the Malibu house. But he's not there. What have you done with him? I set my cup down. Amelia. If your 38-year-old brother has gone missing after a bender, I suggest you file a report with the police. I'm not his keeper. Not anymore. You know exactly what she means, Robert's voice boomed. Surprisingly deep and resonant for such a small mouth. He didn't look at me, he looked at his legal pad. This financial siege you've initiated. Freezing joint assets midstream. Locking a man out of his own home. It's unconscionable. Not to mention of highly questionable legality. The legality was settled yesterday at 3:47 p.m. by Judge Wilton in the Los Angeles Superior Court, I said. My voice level. The quitclaim deeds were recorded at 4:15 p.m. The funds were transferred per the terms of the separation agreement, which your nephew signed without, I assume, reading. There is no siege, Robert. There is only the execution of a legally binding judgment. If you have questions about its validity, I'm sure Meredith Shaw would be happy to clarify for you. For her standard rate. Of course. Robert's head snapped up. His pale eyes were icy. Don't be glib. You know very well the spirit of the agreement. The liquidity provisions for the family trust. The foundation accounts, these were to remain operational during the transition. You've created a liquidity crisis of epic proportions. I've created nothing, I said, turning my gaze to Eleanor. Your son created the crisis. I simply stopped writing checks to cover his losses. And yours. Eleanor's composure cracked. Just for a second. A tick in her jaw. How dare you? I dare with bank statements. Eleanor, I said, opening the folio I'd brought with me. I didn't take anything out. It was a prop. But a potent one. I dare with transfer records showing six-figure sums moving from the family equity line to an entity called Karmavate LLC over the last 18 months. I dare with margin calls from Goldman Sachs that came to the house. Because someone used the Hancock Park address as collateral. My question isn't how I dare. My question is, how did you dare? How did you let him risk everything? Or did you not know? I let the question hang. Poisonous. Somehow. I think you knew. Amelia stood up. Her chair scraping loudly. You shut your mouth. You have no right to speak to my mother that way. After everything this family has done for you. We took you in. We gave you a name. I looked at her. This furious, irrelevant woman. You gave me a name that is now synonymous with financial idiocy and public adultery. Thank you. I think I'll go back to my own. You vicious, ungrateful bitch. Amelia spat. Amelia. Sit down, Eleanor commanded. Her voice like a whip crack. Amelia sat. Fuming. Eleanor steepled her fingers. Her knuckles white. Clara. Let's stop with the theatrics. We are here for a resolution. You have caused a great deal of damage. But it is not irreparable. We are prepared to be reasonable. Reasonable, I repeated. Define reasonable. Robert cleared his throat. You will immediately release 50% of the frozen joint funds back into an escrow account we will control. You will restore access to the Malibu property, specifically to the main floor study and the wine cellar. You will provide written authorization for the continuation of all funding to the Eleanor Evans Charitable Foundation at the previously agreed levels. In return, we will not pursue legal action for breach of fiduciary duty, for the unlawful conversion of marital assets, or for the intentional infliction of emotional distress. I stared at him. Then, I laughed. It was a genuine laugh. Short and sharp. You're joking. I assure you. I am not, Robert said, his face flushing a deeper shade of puce. Fiduciary duty? To whom? I owed Evan a duty during our marriage. That marriage ended yesterday. Conversion? The money was mine to transfer. Emotional distress? I looked at Eleanor. You should hear the voicemails you left me last night. A masterclass in inflicting distress. I've saved them. By the way. All 4 to 5. The one where you call me a social climbing cunt is particularly poignant. I'm thinking of setting it to music. Eleanor went very still. The color drained from her face, leaving her makeup standing out in stark, garish patches. The voicemails were her Achilles heel, an unguarded, recorded moment of pure venom. In the cold light of a legal battle, they would be catastrophic. You wouldn't, she whispered. I'm a vicious, ungrateful bitch, I said, echoing Amelia. I would. In a heartbeat. Robert tried to regain control. Be that as it may. The financial reality, I interrupted. My voice hardening. Is that your nephew is a liar and a profligate fool? The reality is that you, I pointed a finger at Eleanor, allowed him to use the family's entire legacy as his personal slush fund, either out of ignorance or, more likely, because you were skimming from the same pot for your stipend and your parties. The reality is that the foundation is a tax dodge with a canapé problem, and it's about to be audited into oblivion. The reality is that you are all here, not because you're worried about Evan, but because the well has run dry and you're terrified of being seen at the Palm without a reservation. The brutal truth, spoken in the quiet, elegant room, had the force of a physical blow. Amelia looked like she might be sick. Robert's pen had stopped moving. Eleanor just stared at me, her eyes hollow. What do you want, Clara? Eleanor asked, her voice stripped of all pretense now. It was just tired, old, and scared. I wanted a divorce, I said. I got it. What I want now is for you to leave me alone. The jewelry, she said, the words clawing their way out. My mother's emeralds. In the Malibu safe. They are not a marital asset. They are family heirlooms. They belong to me. Then you should have kept them in your own safe, I said. Not in a house you allowed your son to treat as a bachelor pad and a bank vault. As they are located in a property that is now solely in my name. Their disposition is a matter for my attorneys and the probate courts. If you'd like to try and prove provenance, I'm sure it will make for lovely discovery. We can subpoena all the old appraisals, the insurance riders, see where the money to pay the premiums really came from the last few years. I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. The emeralds were likely uninsured. Or underinsured. Another corner cut. You are trying to destroy this family, Robert said. But the bluster was gone. It was just an observation now. No, I said. Standing up. I was done. Your family was already a shell. I'm just the one holding the flashlight so everyone can see the rot. Evan destroyed it. You enabled him. I'm just the cleanup crew. I walked to the door. I paused, my hand on the knob, and looked back at the three of them, frozen at the table. A tableau of gilded decline. One final piece of advice, I said. From me to you. Get your own lawyers. Good ones. Because Meredith Shaw is going to tie you in knots. And when the banks come for the Hancock Park house, and they will, the moment that margin call isn't met, don't call me. My charity begins and ends with recommending a good real estate agent. I hear the market for haunted mansions is soft. But you might get lucky. I opened the door. Clara. Wait. Eleanor's voice was a ragged gasp. She was standing now, one hand pressed to the table for support. All the fury, the grandeur, the matriarchal dignity, was gone. What was left was a terrified old woman facing the abyss. Please. The foundation, the gala, it's in 6 weeks. The invitations are out. The mayor is coming. If I cancel, if I can't pay, it will be a scandal that will never die. I will be a laughingstock. Please. You can have the emeralds. Just let me have this one last thing. Let me save face. I looked at her. This woman who had spent a lifetime judging me, belittling me, seeing me as a necessary but regrettable accessory to her bloodline. She was begging. And I felt nothing. Not triumph. Not pity. Nothing. Eleanor, I said. My voice perfectly calm. You should have thought about your face before you decided to fuck with my money. I stepped out into the hallway, pulling the door closed behind me. The solid thunk of the heavy wood was the last sound I heard from the Evans family tribunal. I walked back through the hushed luxury of the hotel, my heels silent on the thick carpet. My heart was not racing. My hands were not shaking. There was only a vast, echoing quiet. The silence after a storm has passed and left only wreckage in its wake. Back in my suite, I went straight to the balcony. The morning sun was strong now, bleaching the color from the city. Down in the courtyard, I saw them emerge. Eleanor, leaning heavily on Robert's arm, her head bowed, a broken queen in exile. Amelia followed, texting furiously, no doubt trying to spin the disaster to someone, anyone. Who would still listen? A valet brought Robert's rented town car around. As he helped Eleanor into the back seat, she looked up. Her eyes scanned the hotel's facade, floor by floor, as if she could find me, as if she could launch one last silent curse. Our eyes did not meet. The distance was too great, the glass too reflective. The car pulled away, disappearing into the stream of morning traffic. Gone. I turned my back on the city. The war council was over. They had thrown their best at me: guilt, threats, legal bluster, raw desperation. And they had failed. They had nothing left but their dwindling name and their mounting debts. My phone buzzed. A message from Meredith. Heard you had visitors. Everything handled, I typed back. Tribunal dismissed. They're scrambling. The margin call is real. It's worse than we thought. He leveraged everything. Her reply was immediate. I know. My investigator just called. It's not just Goldman. It's 2 other banks. And there's a shadow lender. A nasty one. Evans in deep water. He's about to drag the whole family name under. What do you want to do? I looked out at the clear, empty sky. The path was obvious. The only path. Burn it down, I typed. Every last pretension. Let's see how they swim. Your wish, she replied, is my subpoena. I put the phone down. The suite was silent, clean, paid for. Mine. The family Evans had come to judge me. And they had found me presiding over the ruins of their own kingdom. It was, I thought, a fitting end to the fairy tale. The Cyprus room had been a purge, a venting of the poison that had festered for years. Leaving them there, shattered and scheming, should have felt like a victory. It felt like stepping out of a stuffy room into cold, thin air. The fight was over. But the landscape it revealed was a barren, hostile plain. Back in my suite, the silence felt heavier, strategic. I was a general in a war room after the enemy's command structure had been obliterated. Now came the occupation, the mapping of the scorched earth. Meredith arrived an hour later, a leather attaché in one hand and a determined glint in her eye that even the hotel's hushed opulence couldn't soften. She didn't sit. She paced. A sleek panther in a Prada suit. They've lawyered up, she announced without preamble. Robert is, predictably, representing himself and Eleanor. He's a blustering idiot in over his head. But he's a connected idiot. He's already filed a motion for an emergency hearing to clarify the asset freeze, claiming duress and your reckless endangerment of the Evans family estate. She snorted. It's a Hail Mary. A messy, pathetic one. But it means they're moving from panic to pitched battle. We need the heavy artillery. You said your investigator called, I said, pouring her a glass of water from the carafe. I was done with coffee. My nerves were wound tight enough. Shadow lenders. How bad? Meredith stopped pacing and fixed me with a look. Bad, Clara. Not maxed out credit cards bad. We're talking guys with names like Vinny who break knees for fun bad. Evan didn't just go to the banks. When they said no, he went to the river. He borrowed against everything. The house, the art, the future dividends of the trust. He used forged signatures. Eleanor's, yours on some of the older documents. A cold trickle, like ice water, ran down my spine. Forged. My signature. On loan documents from 18 months ago. For a business venture called Coastal Lux Development. Sound familiar? I shook my head. The cold spreading. No. It's a shell. A ghost. The investigator is still tracing it. But the money, $500,000, wound up in the Caimans. Then vanished. Probably a casino marker. The point is, Clara, you're named. Your signature is on paper that says you guaranteed a loan with a VIC that would make a loan shark blush. These people, they don't file motions. They send messages. Of the 2x4 variety. I sat down. The weight of it pressing on me. This was no longer about public humiliation or even financial ruin. This was about physical danger. A debt I hadn't incurred. Attached to my name. Can they come after me, legally? Unlikely. The signatures are forgeries. A decent graphologist will shred them. But these aren't people who wait for court dates. They see a name, an address, Assets. They'll come for what they can get. And right now, you look a lot more solvent than Evan does. She leaned forward, her palms on the table. We need the full picture. Not just what we suspect. We need the ledger. The real one. Not the books Arthur Finch has. The secret books. The ones Evan kept to hide all this from his mother. From the banks. From you. And how do we get that? My voice was calm. But it felt thin. Stretched over a chasm. Meredith smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. We ask the one person who was in the room when he wrote it. The one person who has more to lose from those ledger entries becoming public than anyone except Evan himself. It took me a second. Eleanor. Eleanor, Meredith confirmed. She knew. She had to. Maybe not about the shadow lenders. Not specifically. But about the margin. The diverted funds. The shell companies. She was signing foundation checks funded by those very schemes. She was living off the proceeds. She's an accomplice. Not a victim. And she's terrified. We saw her terror this morning. We need to weaponize it. The voicemails, I said, are a start. But they are emotional. We need forensic. We need the numbers. The transfers. The account numbers. The dates. Meredith pulled a sleek, silver voice recorder from her bag and set it on the table between us. It looked innocuous. Deadly. We subpoena her. We depose her. We ask her, under oath, about every suspicious transfer, every consulting fee paid to a dummy corporation. Every time she looked the other way. The discovery process will be a bloodbath. It will take years. It will cost her millions in legal fees she doesn't have. And it will all become public record. Every charity donor, every society friend, will see the guts of her grift. I understood. It was a threat more potent than any lawsuit. It was the threat of total, irredeemable exposure. The end of the Evans name as anything but a punchline. She'll never agree to a deposition, I said. Robert will block it. Tie it up forever. Which is why we don't give her the choice, Meredith said. Her eyes gleaming. We go around her. We go to the source. We find the ledger ourselves. And we use it to make her an offer she can't refuse. How? Your investigator, I guessed. His name is Damon Price. Ex-financial crimes. Sec. He's a ghost. And he's very, very good. He's already found the shell companies. He's following the crypto trail from the brothers' failed startup. He thinks Evan kept a backup. A digital file. A life raft in case things went south. Something to trade for leniency or to blackmail his co-conspirators, including, potentially, his mother. He wouldn't keep it on a cloud server tied to his name. He'd keep it somewhere physical, but accessible. Not the Malibu house, you've locked that down. Not his apartment, too volatile. Somewhere he felt was secure, but under his control. A memory surfaced, sharp and clear. 2 years ago. A fight. He'd forgotten my birthday dinner. He'd stumbled in at midnight, smelling of cigar smoke and someone else's perfume. I'd been furious. Cold. He'd been defensively belligerent. You want to know where I was? Fine. I was at the club, going over the books with the new accountant. Trying to keep a roof over your entitled head. It's not all charity galas and art openings. Clara. Some of us actually have to work. The club. The Los Angeles Country Club. No. He'd resigned from there after a dispute over dues. His club. The one he'd bought into with a group of other young, restless heirs. A place for networking and, undoubtedly, scheming. The Apex Club. A members-only bastion of modern decadence in a converted old bank building downtown. He had a permanent locker there. For his golf shoes, he'd said. But he didn't golf. The Apex Club, I said aloud. He has a private locker. Suite 312. He was always peculiar about it. Never let the attendants clean it. Had his own combination lock on it. Not the club's. Meredith's eyebrows shot up. A locker in a private club. It's perfect. Not a home. Not an office. Semi-public. But access controlled. Under his name. But not subject to routine searches. If he has a backup drive, that's where it would be. We can't just break in, I said. Though the thought was tempting. We don't have to, Meredith said, a slow smile spreading across her face. We just need to convince the club to grant us access. As part of the ongoing divorce proceedings and asset discovery, a court order for the inspection and inventory of personal effects in all locations under the respondent's control. It's a fishing expedition, but given the allegations of hidden assets and fraud, a judge will likely grant it. Especially our judge. Wilton hates financial shenanigans almost as much as he hates people wasting his time. The plan took shape with terrifying speed. The law, a blunt instrument in the hands of someone like Robert, was a scalpel in Meredith's. We would use it to cut straight to the heart of the secret. How long? I asked. I can have the motion drafted by noon. Wilton's clerk owes me a favor. We could have an order by end of day tomorrow. We execute the day after, with a police escort, if necessary, to prevent interference. She picked up the voice recorder. But before we go in with legal force, we try the softer approach. We give Eleanor one last chance to do the smart thing. You want me to call her? I want you to see her. Alone. Well, not alone. I'll be in the next room. But you need to look her in the eye and lay out the new reality. The reality where we have the power to activate her life and display the rot for all to see. Offer her a way out. The only way out. Which is, full financial disclosure. Every hidden account. Every shell company. Every record of her complicity. She gives us the ledger. Or she tells us where it is. In return, we agree to a quiet, private financial separation. We don't pursue her for fraud. We don't drag the foundation through discovery. We let her keep the Hancock Park house, what's left of it after the banks are done. We let her salvage some dignity. But she gives us Evan. Wholly and completely. She signs an affidavit detailing his fraud, his forgeries, his mismanagement. She becomes our star witness against her own son. The brutality of it took my breath away. It was matricide by affidavit. It was forcing a mother to choose between her legacy and her child. It was the coldest, most ruthless play imaginable. And it was the only play we had. She'll never do it, I breathed. Meredith's smile was pitiless. She's a survivor. Clara. She's spent her entire life surviving. She'll do the math. A public, drawn-out legal battle that ends with her in bankruptcy and prison adjacent. Or a private, painful sacrifice that leaves her with a roof, a tarnished name, and her freedom. She'll choose the roof. They always do. The meeting was set for that afternoon. At the offices of Shaw Associates. Neutral territory. A conference room all glass and steel. A far cry from the wood-paneled menace of the Cypress Room. Meredith's domain. Eleanor arrived exactly on time. Alone. Robert, apparently, had been left to file his meaningless motions. She looked like she'd aged a decade in a day. Her suit was the same, but it hung on her. The pearls seemed to weigh her down. She walked in, her spine straight, but the effort was visible. I was already seated. Meredith stood by the window, a silhouette against the afternoon sun. Eleanor, I said. Thank you for coming. She didn't acknowledge the courtesy. She took the seat across from me, her hands folded in her lap. You have 1 hour. My attorney advised me this is a waste of time. Then let's not waste it, Meredith said, turning from the window. She didn't sit. She loomed. We're past the threats. Eleanor. We're at the consequences. Your son has committed multiple acts of fraud. Forgery. He has likely broken several federal banking laws. The margin debt is the least of it. He's involved with lenders of questionable legality. Eleanor's face was a mask. I have no knowledge of my son's business affairs. That's interesting, Meredith said, placing a single sheet of paper on the table. It was a bank statement. From the Eleanor Evans Charitable Foundation. A wire transfer. 6 months ago. For $75,000. To an entity called Hermes Consulting. Because Hermes Consulting received a total of $285,000 from the foundation over the last 18 months. For strategic planning services. The principal of Hermes Consulting is a man named Carl Carmichael. Sophie Carmichael's brother. The same Carl Carmichael whose startup, Karmavate, Received a $200,000 investment from Evan, drawn from the family equity line. 2 weeks before the first foundation payment to Hermes. That looks less like charity, Eleanor, and more like a money laundering carousel. And you signed every one of those foundation checks. Eleanor didn't look at the paper. She stared at a point on the wall behind me, but a fine tremor had started in her clasped hands. I trusted my son's recommendations for vendors, she said, her voice hollow. You trusted your son to funnel charitable donations that provided you with lavish tax deductions, into his girlfriend's brother's failing business, I corrected. My voice quiet. You trusted him to prop up your lifestyle with money that wasn't his. And when that wasn't enough, you trusted him to gamble with the deed to your house. And you signed whatever he put in front of you. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were wells of pure hatred. You think you're so clever. You think you have us cornered. We have the motions. Eleanor, Meredith said, her voice dropping to a conversational, deadly tone. We have the subpoenas ready. For you. For the foundation's books. For your personal bank records for the last 10 years. We will depose you for a week. We will ask you, under oath, about every vacation, every piece of jewelry, every bottle of wine, and trace the funding source. We will subpoena your friends, your donors. We will turn your life into a public audit. The IRS will be the least of your worries. By the time we're done, the name Evans will be synonymous with fraud in this town. You will never get another donation. You will never be invited to another luncheon. You will be a pariah in the only world you've ever known. The mask shattered. Raw. Animal fear stared out at us. You can't. We can, I said. And we will. Unless you help us. Help you? She spat. Help you destroy my son? My family, your family is already destroyed, I said. Not unkindly. It was just a fact. Evan destroyed it. You have a choice now. You can go down with the ship, tied to him, drowning in scandal and debt. Or you can get in the lifeboat. It's a small, uncomfortable boat, but it floats. The lifeboat, she echoed, dully. You give us the ledger. Eleanor, Meredith said, leaning forward. The real books, the hidden accounts, the records of the forgeries, the shell companies, the transfers to the Carmichaels, everything. You give us a sworn affidavit detailing Evan's actions. To the best of your knowledge, you cooperate fully. In return, we sign a binding agreement. We do not pursue any civil or criminal action against you. We do not subpoena the Foundation's records. We allow you to settle the margin calls and the other debts in a structured, private manner. You may even keep the Hancock Park house, though you'll likely have to mortgage it to the hilt. You will be poor, by your standards, but you will be free. And you will be quiet. The room was silent. I could hear the hum of the building's HVAC, the distant wail of a siren. Eleanor stared at the polished surface of the table, seeing, I imagined, the ghost of her future reflected there. A small, shabby apartment instead of a mansion. Costco instead of Jelson's. Obscurity instead of reverence. It was a living death for a woman like her. But the alternative was a public execution. A long, shuddering breath escaped her. When she looked up, the hatred was gone. In its place was a vast, empty exhaustion. The exhaustion of a general who knows the war is lost. There's a safety deposit box, she said. Her voice a dry whisper. At the bank. Downtown. It's in my name. But he has the key. He gave me things to put there. Files. A hard drive. He said it was for my protection. In case anything ever happened to him. A bitter, choked sound that might have been a laugh. I think he meant in case I ever turned on him. The key, Meredith pressed. Gently. Where is it? Eleanor's gaze shifted to me. And in her eyes, I saw the last ember of her defiance gutter and die. It's on his keychain. On the ring with the key to that locker. At his club. He never takes it off. He's paranoid about it. The locker at the Apex Club. The key to the safety deposit box. It was all there. A matryoshka doll of secrets. Meredith nodded slowly. Thank you, Eleanor. That's a start. She slid a document across the table. It was the agreement. Already drafted. The terms we'd just outlined. This is the lifeboat. The only one leaving. You can sign it now. Or you can wait for the subpoena. But the offer expires in 1 hour. Eleanor looked at the document. She didn't pick it up. She just stared at the dense blocks of legalese that spelled the end of her world and the betrayal of her son. "He's my boy," she whispered. More to herself than to us. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. After a full minute, she reached into her purse. She didn't pull out a pen. She pulled out a pair of reading glasses. She put them on with trembling hands. Then, slowly, as if each movement caused her physical pain, she picked up the pen Meredith offered and turned to the last page. She hesitated, the pen poised over the signature line. A single tear escaped, tracing a path through her powder. But she made no sound. She swallowed hard. Then, with a swift, slashing motion, she signed her name. Eleanor Prescott Evans. She dropped the pen as if it were red hot. It clattered on the glass table. "The box number is 747, she said. Her voice now utterly devoid of emotion. "The bank is First Mercantile Trust. Downtown. You'll need my signature and the key. And a court order. For the bank. We'll take care of it," Meredith said softly, gathering the document. "Your discretion, until this is over, is part of the agreement. I trust you understand." Eleanor stood. She looked at me. And for a moment, I saw not the matriarch, not the monster, but just a defeated old woman who had loved her son too much and in all the wrong ways. "I hope it was worth it, Clara," she said, her voice a ghost of its former self. "All of it. I hope the money keeps you warm at night." She turned and walked out of the conference room, her steps slow and heavy. The door slid shut behind her. Meredith let out a long breath. Jesus. I was still staring at the space where Eleanor had been. I felt no triumph, only a profound, sickening hollow. We had won. We had broken the queen and turned her against the prince. We had the keys to the kingdom of lies. Was it worth it? I echoed her question. To the empty room. Meredith came around the table and put a hand on my shoulder. "It was survival. Clara, don't confuse it with anything else. Now," she said, her businesslike tone returning. "We have a locker to open, a key to retrieve, and a safety deposit box to crack. The hidden ledger awaits. And with it, the end of Evan Evans." I looked at the signed agreement on the table. Eleanor's name. A desperate, sprawling scratch. The final stroke of the pen that doomed her son. It wasn't justice. It wasn't revenge. It was just the ledger. And it was about to be balanced. The First Mercantile Trust building was a fortress of old money. A neoclassical temple of granite and gilt standing defiantly amidst the glass and steel of downtown Los Angeles. At 9 a.m. precisely, Meredith and I passed through its bronze revolving doors, trailed by a man named Damon Price. Price was Meredith's investigator. He didn't look like a ghost. He looked like a mild-mannered accountant, late 40s. Thinning brown hair. Wire-rimmed glasses. A beige raincoat over a nondescript suit. He carried a slim, professional-looking briefcase. His eyes, however, missed nothing. They scanned the soaring, marble-lined lobby, the teller windows, the security guards, with a calm, analytical detachment. This was his element. The hunt for hidden numbers. We were a strange procession. Meredith, a blade in navy blue, me, a monochrome shadow in black, and Price, the human manifestation of a spreadsheet. We approached the reception desk, where a woman with a helmet of stiff blonde hair regarded us with polite suspicion. "We're here to access safety deposit box 747, Meredith said, her voice crisp and carrying. She placed 2 documents on the polished mahogany. The first was the court order, signed by Judge Walton, granting us access to any and all safety deposit boxes or secure storage facilities under the name of Eleanor P. Evans or Evan P. Evans for the purpose of marital asset discovery. The second was a notarized authorization from Eleanor herself. Her signature a shaky but valid scrawl next to mine. The woman's eyes widened slightly. She picked up the phone, murmured into it, and within minutes, a bank manager, a Mr. Henderson, with a funereal demeanor, appeared. He examined the documents with the intensity of a scholar studying a Dead Sea Scroll. "This is highly unusual," he intoned. "It's a court order, Mr. Henderson," Meredith said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Its usualness is not a relevant legal criterion. We'd like to proceed." He led us through a series of secured doors, each requiring a key card and a code, into the vault room. It was a silent, chilled space, lined with wall upon wall of identical, brushed steel doors. It smelled of cold metal and old paper. Box 747 was at waist level. Mr. Henderson produced the bank's key. I produced Evan's key, retrieved the day before by a uniformed lapped officer accompanying a bailiff to the Apex Club locker. The club manager had been apoplectic, the officer had been implacable. The locker had contained little: a spare shirt, a bottle of expensive bourbon, and a small, felt pouch holding 2 keys. One for the locker itself, the other, smaller, for a safety deposit box. The 2 keys turned in unison with a soft, metallic clunk. Mr. Henderson slid the long, narrow steel box from its cavity and placed it on a table in a private viewing room. "I'll be right outside," he said, his disapproval of physical presence in the room. The door clicked shut. The 3 of us stood around the box. For a moment, no one moved. This was it. The sanctum sanctorum of Evan's deceit. "Okay," Price said, his voice soft. He put on a pair of thin latex gloves. "Let's see what the boy was so afraid of." He lifted the lid. There were no stacks of cash, no bundles of bearer bonds, just paper and plastic. Neat, organized, and damning. On top lay a black, passport-sized moleskin notebook. Price opened it. Page after page of handwritten entries in Evan's looping, arrogant script. Dates, amounts, initials, K, C, $200,000, equity line, E, F, Hermes, $75,000, mom signs, vigorish payment, $12,500, Riverfront Holdings. The ledger, the literal, handwritten ledger. Beneath it were file folders. Price spread them out. One contained printouts of bank statements for offshore accounts in the Caimans and Belize, all under the name of Coastal Lux Development. The sums moving in and out were staggering. Another folder held the loan documents from the shadow lender, Riverfront Holdings. The interest rate was 25%. The collateral listed was the Beverly Hills house, the Malibu house, and the Hancock Park house. My forged signature was on the 3rd page, a clumsy imitation next to Evan's flamboyant one. Seeing it there, in cold, hard copy, sent a fresh wave of icy rage through me. The 3rd folder was the most interesting to Price. It contained records of wire transfers to a cryptocurrency wallet, followed by screenshots of transactions from that wallet to other, increasingly opaque wallets. "This is the Kamavate money," Price murmured, tracing the flow with a gloved finger. "And a lot more." He was trying to hide it, move it, maybe even leverage it in some crypto scheme. "It's a rat's nest. But it's all here." The entire life cycle of the fraud. At the very bottom of the box was a single, slim, silver external hard drive. Price plugged it into a portable, secure laptop he drew from his briefcase. The drive whirred to life. It was a digital mirror of the paper trail. But more, scanned copies of every document. Spreadsheets tracking the spiraling debt. A contacts list with names like Vinny, Riverfront, and Kyle, urgent. And there, in a folder marked CYA, was a video file. Price clicked it open. The timestamp was from 8 months ago. The video was shaky, taken on a phone in a dimly lit room, a study, maybe the one in Malibu. Evan was in the frame, looking agitated. Eleanor's voice, off camera, sharp and clear. "For God's sake, Evan, just sign it. The foundation check needs to cover the quarterly to Hermes. Kyle says they're on the verge of a breakthrough. It's a lot, Mother. If anyone audits, no one audits the foundation. I make sure of that. Now sign. Or do you want your little friend Sophie to find out you can't afford her rent?" Evan scowled, picked up a pen, and signed. The document was turned towards the camera for a second. It was the foundation check authorization for $75,000 to Hermes Consulting. The video ended. A self-incriminating recording. Evan's insurance policy against his own mother. He'd documented her complicity. The room was silent. The hum of Price's laptop the only sound. We had it. The whole, rotten, magnificent truth. Not suspicions. Not allegations. Proof. Meredith let out a low whistle. Well, he wasn't just a fool. He was a meticulous fool. This is everything. It's more than everything, Price said, ejecting the hard drive carefully. With this, you don't just win a divorce. You can refer a case to the DA for fraud, forgery, money laundering. You can give the SEC enough to investigate the foundation for years. This is a career-ending, life-ruining pile of paper. I looked at the spread of evidence on the table. The story of my marriage, written in lies and ledger entries. I felt nothing. The hollow inside me had become a vast, soundless chamber. What now? My voice echoed slightly in the quiet room. Now, Meredith said, a fierce, bright light in her eyes. We stop playing defense. We go public. On our terms. The Wall Street Journal's Los Angeles bureau chief, a woman named Anya Sharma, met me at a quiet restaurant in Santa Monica 2 days later. Meredith had vetted her thoroughly, sharp, ethical, with a renowned dislike for financial predators and the entitled rich who thought rules didn't apply to them. She was the perfect conduit. Over sparkling water. I laid it out. Not the emotion. Not the infidelity. The numbers. The forgeries. The shell games. The siphoning of charitable funds. The margin calls on a grandmother's home. I showed her copies of select documents, the ledger page with the Hermes notation, the loan with the forged signature, a redacted screenshot of the offshore account flow. I played her the audio clip of Eleanor's 45th voicemail, the one with the cold, stark threat. You will not win. I will see you in hell before I let you take what's mine. Anya listened, took notes, asked precise, devastating questions. She didn't care about the diamond, the courthouse steps, the other woman. She cared about the financial architecture of the betrayal. She cared about the abuse of trust, the corruption of a charitable vehicle, the stark, almost Shakespearean tragedy of a family consuming itself from within. This is explosive. Ms. Thorne, she said finally, closing her notebook. It's not a gossip item. It's a financial crime story with a human cost. Are you prepared for the fallout? They will come after you. They will call you bitter, vengeful. I met her gaze. They've already called me worse. Let them. The documents speak for themselves. The article published online at 5 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. The headline was a masterclass in understated devastation, a foundation of sand, inside the financial unraveling of a Los Angeles dynasty by Anya Sharma. The divorce of art consultant Clara Thorne and venture heir Evan Evans was finalized on a sunny Tuesday afternoon. 20 minutes later, Mr. Evans proposed to his girlfriend with a 3-carat diamond. The social media feeds lit up with a familiar narrative. The older wife traded in for a newer model. But court documents and financial records obtained by the Wall Street Journal reveal a far darker, more complex story, one of alleged fraud, forged signatures, and the systematic plundering of marital and charitable assets that has left a once prominent family teetering on the brink of financial and social ruin. It was all there. The shell companies, the Hermes Consulting scheme, the margin debt, the shadow lender. Eleanor's voicemail was quoted, highlighting the threatening pressure. My role was that of the discoverer, the whistleblower who had stumbled upon the rot while trying to disentangle a marriage. The article was clinical, precise, and utterly merciless. It didn't call Evan a cad, it called him a fraudster. It didn't call Eleanor a difficult mother-in-law, it called her a potential co-conspirator in the misuse of charitable funds. It was 1,000 times more damaging than any tabloid exposé about a cheating husband. The fallout was instantaneous and seismic. By 7 a.m., my phone, monitored by Meredith, was flooded with requests for comment from every major outlet, financial and social. I gave none. Meredith issued a single, terse statement, Ms. Thorne is focused on rebuilding her life and ensuring the responsible stewardship of her assets. She has no further comment at this time. By 9 a.m., the Attorney General's office announced a preliminary inquiry into the Eleanor Evans Charitable Foundation. The IRS issued a statement that it was reviewing the matter. The society pages of the LA Times quietly pulled a pre-written profile of Eleanor slated for the Weekend magazine. By noon, the website for the Evans family office was down. The Apex Club, according to a source, had suspended Evans' membership pending review. The buzz on social media shifted from schadenfreude to something closer to horror. The narrative flipped entirely. I was no longer the Ice Queen ex-wife. I was the wronged woman who had uncovered a financial crime syndicate in her own home. Sophie was recast from triumphant mistress to another of Evans' victims, a girl whose brother had been the recipient of stolen charity funds. The pictures of her crying outside my hotel were repurposed with captions about the human cost of greed. That evening, I dressed for the launch party of the Phoenix Fund. I'd moved fast. Using a fraction of the reclaimed capital, I'd established a grant-making organization to provide financial literacy, legal aid, and emergency funds for women navigating financial abuse in divorce. The name was Meredith's idea. Rising from the ashes. It was perfect. The party was at a modern art gallery in Culver City. The space was all white walls and concrete floors, hung with bold, powerful works by female artists. I wore a simple, columnar dress the color of fresh blood. No jewelry. I didn't need any. The room was packed. Friends, colleagues, curious members of the media, wealthy women who wrote checks to causes that moved them. The air hummed with a new kind of energy. Respect, curiosity, awe. Even, I moved through the crowd, accepting quiet congratulations, giving short, focused speeches about the mission of the fund. I was calm, graceful, in control. Halfway through the evening, Meredith sidled up to me, a flute of champagne in her hand, her phone in the other. "You need to see this," she murmured, tilting the screen. It was a video, shot from a phone, clearly at a bar. The lighting was terrible, the sound tinny. Evan, he was slumped in a leather booth, his tie undone, his hair a mess. He was yelling at someone off camera. "She took everything. The bitch took everything. And my mother, my own mother." His voice broke into drunken, ragged sobs. He buried his face in his hands. The person filming zoomed in on the Cartier love bracelet, still on his wrist, looking absurd and tragic. The video ended. It had already been viewed 500,000 times. The caption, "From Prince to Pauper." The juxtaposition was cruel. Perfect. Here I was, in a gallery, launching a philanthropic enterprise. There he was, a publicly weeping drunk in a dive bar. The court of public opinion had not just ruled in my favor, it had taken him out back and shot him. My phone vibrated in my clutch. A number I didn't recognize. But the area code was New York. Robert, perhaps. Or maybe the shadow lender. Vinny. I silenced it. A moment later, it buzzed again. Then again. Insistent. I excused myself and stepped out onto a small, private balcony overlooking the lighted city. I answered, yes, for a moment. There was only harsh, ragged breathing. Then, his voice, slurred, thick with tears and rage and defeat. "Clara, Evan, you have a lot of nerve calling this number," I said, my voice cool in the night air. A wet, choking sound. You ruined me. The article, the AG, my club. You ruined my life." I looked out at the glittering grid of Los Angeles, at the city that had watched his rise and was now witnessing his spectacular crash. "No, Evan, you did that." I just held up a mirror. A very public, well-lit mirror. "I loved you," he screamed, the sound cracking through the speaker. "Once. I did. And you're a monster. A calculating, heartless monster. You planned this. You wanted me to fail." I felt a distant, academic curiosity. This was the core of him. The profound, unshakable belief that he was the victim of circumstances, of other people's actions. He had no vocabulary for his own agency, his own culpability. I didn't want you to forge my signature, I said. My words measured, each one a stone dropped into a deep, silent well. I didn't want you to gamble with your mother's house. I didn't want you to steal from a children's charity to fund your girlfriend's brother's pipe dream. I just wanted a husband who wasn't a liar and a thief. That was the bar. Evan. And you couldn't clear it. Silence. Then. A sob. I'm sorry. Okay? I'm sorry. Please. Make it stop. Call the journal. Retract it. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I'll give you anything. I'll sign over anything. Just make it stop. The lenders, they're calling. They're saying things. The fear in his voice was primal. It was the fear of the wolves at the door. The fear he'd created and then outsourced to me to manage. He'd wanted a partner to clean up his messes. Now he had an executioner. It's too late for sorry, Evan, I said. And I was surprised to find no pleasure in the words. Only a vast, weary finality. The story is out. The documents are real. The authorities are involved. Sorry doesn't UN forge a signature. Sorry doesn't repay a 25% VIG. Sorry is a currency that went bankrupt in your account a long time ago. You're enjoying this, he whispered. Venom seeping back in. You're loving every second of it. I thought of the hollow feeling. The silence in the suite. The ledger entries swimming behind my eyes. The look on Eleanor's face as she signed her son's fate. No. Evan, I said. My voice soft. Almost pitying. I'm not enjoying it. I'm just finished. We're finished. Don't call this number again. All future communication goes through Meredith. And Evan, a ragged breath on the other end. Take off the bracelet, I said. It never fit you anyway. I ended the call. I blocked the number. I leaned on the balcony railing. The cool metal under my palms. The sounds of the party, the laughter, the clinking glasses, the low hum of conversation, filtered out through the glass doors. A celebration of a new beginning, built on the meticulously documented ruins of an old one. Inside, someone called my name. I turned. Anya Sharma, the journalist, was waving me over. A small, respectful smile on her face. A group of influential women waited to meet me, to talk about the Phoenix Fund. I took a deep breath of the night air, let it out slowly. Then I turned my back on the dark, on the city, on the sound of a man sobbing into a void. I smoothed the red fabric of my dress. I fixed a calm, composed expression on my face. And I walked back into the light. And the noise. And the future I had bought and paid for with a hidden ledger and a broken heart. The Pacific at dawn is a different creature. Not the bright, cheerful blue of postcards, but a vast, shifting plain of liquid mercury and charcoal, sighing against the shore in a rhythm older than regret. I stood on the deck of the Malibu house, my house, a thick wool wrap pulled tight against the salt-tinged chill. The lights of the coast highway were distant, insignificant pinpricks. Here, there was only the sky lightening in the east and the endless, patient roll of the water. 7 days. A week since the courthouse steps. A biblical unit of time for creation. My creation had been one of meticulous deconstruction. The digital and financial exorcism was complete. The money was secured in a labyrinth of trusts. The deeds to both houses were recorded solely in my name. The locks had been changed. The alarm codes randomized. The staff rehired on my payroll alone. The Evans name had been scrubbed from the mailboxes. The utility bills. The very dust in the air. My phone lay silent on the teak table beside me. The tsunami of notifications had receded. The calls from desperate numbers had stopped. The world, having gorged itself on the spectacle of the Evans collapse, had moved on to fresher carnage. Eleanor's foundation was under formal investigation. The AG's press release had been terse and brutal. Robert had slunk back to New York. His legal bluster revealed as empty as the family coffers. Amelia's social media had gone dark. Evan, according to the single, discreet update from Meredith, had been evicted from a short-term rental in Venice. His car had been repossessed. His location was unknown. The Riverfront Holdings situation was, in Meredith's delicate phrasing, being resolved without your involvement, which I took to mean the shadow lenders had found him and extracted whatever pound of flesh they could. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not fear. A void where he had been. A single, determined seagull cried overhead. A stark sound in the quiet. This was the silence after the blast wave. It was absolute. It was mine. I went inside. The heated floors a welcome shock against my bare feet. The house felt different. Not just empty of his things, the ugly lacquered sculpture from a trip to Bangkok. The collection of vintage skateboards. The closet full of clothes that smelled of his cologne. It felt lighter. The air moved more freely. I had ordered the cleaners to do a deep purge. And they had. They'd even washed the windows. The morning light streamed in. Clean and unfiltered. Exposing every surface. Forgiving nothing. I made coffee in the pristine, seldom used kitchen. The machine was a foreign object. Anya, the housekeeper, had always done this. The ritual was clumsy, but the result was strong and bitter. I took the cup to the office, the room Evan had used as a den. A place of cigar smoke and bad decisions. I'd had it stripped. The masculine leather club chairs were gone. The dark wood paneling painted a soft, clean white. It was a blank slate. My laptop sat alone on a vast, reclaimed wood desk. I opened it. The screen glowed to life. No shared wallpaper. No saved passwords for his accounts. Just a simple, serene image of a Georgia O'Keeffe flower, a study in bold, singular beauty. I opened a new document. The cursor blinked. A patient, demanding metronome in the quiet room. I had spent a week ending a life. Now, I had to begin one. I typed a title, Cold Vows, a memoir. I stopped. It felt presumptuous, grandiose. Yet, the story was there, coiled inside me. A poison and a propellant. Anya Sharma from the journal had suggested it. Off the record, you have a narrative of financial abuse that people need to hear. Not just the salacious bits. The mechanics of it. It could be a lifeline. A lifeline. Not a revenge fantasy. A manual. A warning. I began to type. Not about the diamond. Not about the kiss. About the first time I noticed a discrepancy in the quarterly financial statement from Arthur Finch. A $15,000 withdrawal labeled business development. I'd asked Evan about it over dinner. Just whining and dining a potential investor. Darling, don't worry your pretty little head about it. The patronizing smile. The pat on my hand. The seed of doubt. Planted in fertile soil. The words began to flow. Slow at first. Then faster. I wrote about the quiet erosion. The gaslighting dressed as reassurance. The way financial control is just another form of a cage. I wrote about the ledger. Not as a weapon, but as a map of a relationship's decay. I wrote about Eleanor's voicemails, not as hysteria, but as the sound of a system protecting itself at all costs. I lost track of time. The sun climbed higher, painting a bright rectangle on the floor. My coffee grew cold. The only sounds were the keys clicking and the distant, rhythmic shush of the waves. My phone buzzed. A rude vibration on the wood. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Persistent. I glanced at the screen. Amanda. My sister. The one person who had called not for gossip, but to see if I was breathing. I answered. You're alive. Her voice, warm and familiar, flooded the quiet room. I've been watching the everything. Are you okay? Really? I looked out the window at the impossible expanse of blue. I'm standing on my own deck, drinking my own coffee, in my own house. So yes, I'm okay. A pause. Good. That's good. Listen, I have to tell you something. Mom and Dad know about all of it. The forgeries, the loans, the everything. A cold knot formed in my stomach. My parents, retired in Arizona, living a life of golf and goodwill, far from this world of curated malice. Are they? They're furious. At him. At his whole rotten family. Dad wanted to fly out and I convinced him sending his legal team was a more effective threat. The point is, Clara, they're on your side. They always were. They just didn't know. Tears, hot and unexpected, pricked at my eyes. I had been so isolated for so long, playing the part of the capable wife, handling the messy business so as not to worry them. I'd thought I was protecting them. I'd just been alone. Thank you, I managed. My voice thick. Don't thank me. Just, be you again. Whoever that is now. She hesitated. The fund. The Phoenix thing, it's incredible. Clara. It's you. We talked a few minutes more. The normal, anchoring stuff of sisters. When I hung up, the room felt different. Warmer. The silence was no longer empty, it was spacious. I returned to the document. The cursor blinked. My story. My terms. The phone rang again. This time. A 212 number. New York. A publisher. Meredith had, with my tacit permission, floated the book idea to a few select contacts. The feeding frenzy had begun. I let it go to voicemail. I would call them back. I would listen to the offers. I would, for the first time, negotiate for myself. My words. My truth. But not yet. I saved the document. Cold Vows. Chapter 1. I stood and walked back out to the deck. The morning was in full blaze now. The sea a dazzling, restless sheet of blue and silver. The gull was gone. The air was clear. I breathed in, deep, the salt, the eucalyptus, the faint, clean scent of the ocean. My lungs filled with it. This was not an ending. Endings are for stories where someone wins and someone loses. This was something else. A settlement. A quiet, hard-won peace. Purchased with every shred of evidence. Every dropped tear. Every shattered illusion. It was the first page of a life I had written for myself. A life that was, finally, completely, irrevocably, my own. I lifted my face to the sun. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt not the weight of a crown, nor the chill of a cell, but the simple, profound warmth of light on my own skin.